So the Western Cape High Court has overturned a ruling that impacted on survivors of historical sexual assault. In fact, two Cape Town women laid charges 4 decades after the alleged crime happened in the 1970s. The High Court ruling now means that victims will not be penalized for not reporting incident assault earlier. One of the sisters, that's Claudine Shiels, wrote a memoir called Walking Through Front Doors. She joins us now via our video link for more on this. And Claudine, thank you so much for speaking to us on the AM Report. It's great to have you on the program. So 47 years ago, I think it was, when you were assaulted by a group of brothers, I understand. Help us understand what took place at that time and how this ruling essentially affects your case.
My sister and I were sexually abused good morning, first of all. My sister and I were sexually abused in the 1970s by two brothers. And this took place from 1974 until 1979. We laid charges 3.5 years ago when the Constitutional Court in 2018 voted to overturn the prescription period for reporting sexual assaults. There was a time limit of 20 years, and after that you could no longer report. But this was overturned in June 2018 by the Constitutional Court. And at that stage, my sister and I were ready and waiting, and we were strong enough to lay charges. Up until then, there just wasn't that sort of climate where you could talk about these things. We're older now, and we'd had enough time to really accept and examine how these assaults had affected our lives. Really, these were life-changing crimes. Yeah. And so we felt now's the time to lay charges, because now we can.
And of course, there's all kinds of reasons why victims might take some time before coming forward. And that's why this ruling is so crucial. But, I mean, to your understanding, why is it that the Western Cape High Court wasn't in line, essentially, with the Constitutional Court, which already ruled on this matter back in 2018, as you mentioned?
Well, they were, insofar as they had opened the door to historic cases. Right. But the problem is, once we were in court, and the last time we were in court was in December 2019, we hit a major roadblock in that the NPA realized that they've opened the door to these historic cases, but the legal framework within which these old cases are tried really needed to be re-examined. I mean, when we were in court, the defense argued that the Sexual Offences Amendment Act of 2007 could not be applied retrospectively to our case. And the thing is, there are sections in that amendment which protect victims in historic cases from the negative inferences of you reporting so late. So they argued that, this could not be applied retrospectively, and that what applied at the time of the crimes, that should be brought to bear upon our case. And of course, the NPA said this is not fair because, we may as well sort of pack up and go home in historic cases because, we're not going to get any convictions. Right. And so we hit a major roadblock, and so the NPA took it to the High Court for review because, to our dismay, the magistrate upheld this argument of the defences. So we were kind of left very exposed in court for it to be claimed that, well, you've reported so late, it can't possibly be true. So this was taken to the High Court for review, and this, I think that, the whole process started in December 2019, and we just got a ruling now, 22 months later. And it's been very difficult waiting so long, but we got the result we were hoping for, and this is a major victory for all future historic sexual assault cases.
Absolutely. I imagine some people watching our discussion now might actually feel a bit more encouraged to step forward, even if their abuses actually took place decades ago, as was the case in your instance. Help us understand what this means for the way forward. The actual trial hasn't begun yet. What do you know about where the perpetrators are and whether or not they'd be able to even show up for trial?
Well, yes, they, one is here and one is in another part of the country. So yes, the next step is to get a trial date. But as our prosecutor said to us, this is this has made legal history. And right now we just, we're celebrating that.
Yeah.
And the next step is for our prosecutor and, the people involved in the prosecution to meet and discuss the way forward and then look for a trial date. But we can go into our trial knowing that the laws that are going to apply in our case are much fairer and much more aligned with our Constitution. Because it isn't fair that victims get penalized for only finding the courage decades later to come forward and speak about what happened to them. Sometimes that is an indication of how traumatized you've been.
Right.
And for how long you've had to deal with the effects of these absolutely debilitating crimes against you. It's no indication of the veracity of your case at all. Some people are not able to report ever. And I'm just grateful, to my sister for, really having the courage to say to me, we need to do something about what happened to us. This has never gone away. It's badly affected our lives. It put our lives on a totally different track. We didn't become the adults that we were going to become. That's the extent of the impact on us. And she said, let's do something about this. Are we in agreement? And I said, yes, we are.
Sure.
But she pushed through and made the first move. And I'm very grateful that we did, because this is going to have a major impact on future victims. And it's also sending a very clear message to sex offenders and potential sex offenders. Don't think time is going to hide you. The game's up. The tide is turned against those who abuse women and children. And the law and the courts are now recognizing, they're following that turning tide and saying, right, the law's now catching up, and to sex abusers, your time's up.
Sure. And kudos to you and your sister for getting the courage, I guess, for lack of a better term, to actually pursue this. Taking on an institution and legal framework isn't an easy task, for lack of a better term. Part of what else you've also done is actually put together a memoir, or at least a book that was meant to be a memoir, but because this has affected your life so much, you found yourself also writing about the case too.
I've been writing all my life. I've always loved writing since I was a child. And I started writing this book a long time ago, long before any of this happened. In fact, about 7 years ago. And I just started writing about our incredibly dysfunctional childhood, which, and how it sort of matched the times we were living in the 1970s in South Africa, when dysfunctionality was on a grand scale. And I just started writing for myself. I didn't know where the book was going to go. And then during the writing process, this whole legal situation transpired. So that became part of the story. And of course, that story hasn't ended yet. So, my memoir, it continues in my next book.
Yeah,
the story continues.
Sure. As the situation also continues to unfold, I guess for many people who, sadly in a country like ours, find themselves to be victims of things like sexual assault, which took place years ago, what are you hoping would be the resounding message to them as they watch your bravery unfold and what resulted from that? This victory that we've achieved in the High Court, it is so rewarding to be able to say nobody's ever going to have to go through this again. From now on, the road will be a little bit smoother. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. It's, look, as I said, if I didn't have my sister, it's the two of us doing this together. I'm not sure, how I would have coped, but it is going to be a smoother ride from now on. This case has broken some hard ground. And I must also say that, the NPA
our prosecutor, the people that involved, interested parties, support groups, even police, detectives. What amazing people we have. Our legal system often gets a very bad rap. But I just have to say there are some amazing people in there working so hard to help victims of gender-based violence and sexual assault. And I'm just so pleased to be part of it and to have broken some ground that future victims will never have to do.
Well, thank you very much for helping us tell your story, and one can only hope that it touches many lives and, more importantly, helps, sadly, other people who found themselves in the situation that you were in about 47 years ago.
Thank you.
Claudia, thanks very much indeed. Claudia Shiels is an author, but also speaking to us there in her capacity as one of the victims of a sexual assault that took place 47 years ago, and how that moment has essentially led to changes in our legal framework, allowing people like her to finally get justice. Once again, Claudia Shiels, thanks very much indeed.